A given section of the Erie Canal has a flow rate of 1 meter per second east. East is the positive x direction. A boat with a weak motor can travel at 1 meter per second in calm water, but this time the boat is going to be aimed due north, and its motor is running. Let's draw it. All right, there's our boat. And it says, what is the boat's velocity relative to a frog who's on a leaf just floating down the river? All right, so here's our frog again. The reason why I have the frog is I wanted there to be an observer in frame S prime who can judge the velocity of things in the river. All right, so our frog is moving with frame S prime. And now the boat is going to try to go forward. That's the idea. But that's only what it thinks it's doing, which is v prime. Its real total velocity is a combination of v prime and v frame. But see, the frog is moving with v frame. And now what we'll have is two contributions to the total velocity of the boat, like relative to an observer who's standing on ground, or relative to a bird who's looking down in the situation. Let's say it's a hummingbird that's just not moving relative to the ground. So we want to combine them two into one vector, which would be called the total velocity there. And this would be relative to Earth, which is frame S. And by frame S, of course, I mean the reference frame of the stationary person who's not moving relative to ground. All right, now, what is the boat's velocity relative to a frog on a leaf who's just floating down the river? The distance between the boat and the frog, like the horizontal distance, is going to stay the same, because they're both going to float down the river. They're both going to drift. And so the funny thing is, the v prime here is going to only be based on the vertical, not the horizontal. And if it's just based on the vertical, then that's going to be 1 meter per second, but it's in the j hat direction now, because I'm calling up the positive y, and to the right can be the positive x. All right, so simple as that. The frog thinks the boat just goes up. It's not aware of like the right or leftness of it. Now, what is the boat's velocity relative to a person who's sitting on ground? Well, they're going to see that diagonal motion. And so they're going to think that the total velocity is going to be that combination of v prime and v frame. All right, now what we want to do is just plug in what we found above, 1 meter per second j hat for v prime, because it's moving up. And then over here for the v frame, just put 1 meter per second I hat, because that's the direction that the river is flowing. So I hat goes with x, j hat goes with y. They're called unit vectors, and they just help us separate the horizontal from the vertical.